Communications. I'm your chairman, Ben Wesso. How are you? We're going to get started today, beginning with the first order of business, which is to approve the committee rules. This will be the rules that govern the procedure of the committee throughout the year. And if members have reviewed the rules, we can entertain a motion on that. If not, I can go through a list. I can read the rules and just 5 pages rules. We can sit through that.
We have to establish a quorum. So
We're going to begin by establishing a quorum. So, clerk, please call the roll.
Wesso?
Here.
Wesso here. Fuller? Canella? Hertzberg?
Yep.
Hertzberg here. Hill?
Here.
Hill here. Lara? Leyva?
Here.
Leyva here. McGuire?
Yep.
McGuire here. Morel?
Here.
Morel here. Pavley? Wolk? Okay, so we have a quorum.
We have a quorum, and Senator Hertzberg, were you proposing a motion? Move the rules. Clerk, please call the roll.
Wesso?
Yes, aye.
Wesso aye. Fuller? Canella? Hertzberg?
Aye.
Hertzberg aye. Hill?
Aye.
Hill aye. Lara? Leyva?
Aye.
Leyva aye. McGuire?
Aye.
McGuire aye. Morel?
Aye.
Morel aye. Pavley? Pavley Wolk? Okay.
Senator Allen, you're here. We'll start with you on your bill, SB 687.
Hi, good morning, Senators. So thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm here to talk about SB 687, which seeks to create a renewable gas standard. And as you know, California is an international leader in the efforts to combat climate change. Our efforts have led not just to a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, but also have helped to create jobs, diversified our energy sector, and cleaned our air. Currently, California's gas sector causes 1/4 of the state's greenhouse gas emissions and is a major contributor to global warming. SB 687 seeks to lower the harmful impact of the gas sector by requiring the sellers of gas to begin using more renewable, less carbon-intensive gas. The bill asks the Air Resources Board to establish a carbon-based standard for California's gas supply, modeled after the state's renewable portfolio standard, which has, of course, doubled renewable electricity use in just over a decade, and the low carbon fuel standard. This renewable gas standard will require an average carbon intensity reduction of 1% by 2020, increasing to 10% in 2030, and will include all gas used in the state, including gas used for transportation fuel and what's put into the pipeline. This seeks to offer significant benefits to California. First, replacing just 10% of California's natural gas with renewable gas will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 12.6 million metric tons from fossil fuel displacement alone. The actual emissions reduction would be much greater due to upstream reductions in black carbon from reduced wildfire, for example, and reduced methane emissions from dairies and other uncapped sources. Also, California currently imports 91% of its natural gas. So by requiring the use of renewable gas, which will spur job creation throughout the state at landfills here, wastewater treatment facilities here, and everywhere where organic waste can be transformed into clean renewable gas. Renewable gas will also protect public health in disadvantaged communities by cutting air and water pollution from fossil fuels, especially toxic air contaminants from diesel and from dairies, landfills, and agricultural practices. Under AB 1826, signed last year, food processors, restaurants, and other businesses that produce organic food waste are now required to divert that waste. SB 687, this bill, creates a market for that waste. The bill also directs the Air Board, the PUC, and the CEC to coordinate incentives such as cap and trade revenues, the Electricity Program Investment Charge, and AB 118 funding to help meet the Renewable Gas Standard, the RGS. This will help reduce the cost of renewable gas as the market grows. So like the energy, fuels, and even the transportation sector, to reduce the carbon intensity of the gas sector and realize these benefits will require a combination of incentives and mandates. The RPS and the LCFS, Low Carbon Fuel Standard, even our electric vehicle programs use both approaches to bolster the market, and both are necessary to achieve our goals. SB 687 employs a market-based approach that is technology neutral, and since it's performance-based, developers will focus on providing the lowest carbon gas in the most cost-efficient manner. I've been working with a broad group of stakeholders, many of whom have raised issues and questions we need to address. The bill's a work in progress, and we know we have a lot of work to do to fill in more of the details. I'm committed to continuing this dialogue. I should mention, by the way, that figures developed by Rob Williams of UC Davis, professor there, suggest that California can produce more than 10% of its gas from renewable fuel sources. Yet I know we need to look at that supply and ensure that we can achieve the benefits from a renewable gas standard in an economically feasible way. The committee analysis suggests incorporating cost containment measures. I fully agree. I welcome the opportunity to continue to work with committee staff and stakeholders to determine the best approach. Also, the committee analysis recommends giving the ARB more time to develop the renewable gas program. Again, I'm happy to work with the committee to determine a suitable time frame. With me today, I have Julia Levin from the Bioenergy Association of California, also Ryan Kenny with Clean Energy Fuels, and they're going to speak to the bill and also help to answer questions that folks may have. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. Julia Levin, I'm the Executive Director of the Bioenergy Association of California. We represent about 60 local governments, public agencies, and private companies that are converting organic waste to energy, including the cities of San Jose and Fresno and Roseville, Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts, Victor Valley, Wastewater Authority, the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, the California Refuse and Recycling Council, and many more, public agencies and private companies. As Senator Allen mentioned, organic waste is the largest source of methane emissions in California. According to the Air Board, 3 out of the 5 top sources of methane come from organic waste. That's landfill gas, wastewater treatment facilities, and livestock waste. In addition, more than half of all of our black carbon emissions come from wildfire. For both of these sources of short-lived climate pollutants, the best way to reduce those emissions is bioenergy development. And California does have a lot of potential, as Senator Allen mentioned. According to UC Davis, which keeps the state's database of biomass resources, California produces enough technically available organic waste each and every year to generate 2.5 billion gallons, or gasoline gallon equivalents, of the lowest carbon transportation fuels available. Lower carbon per mile even than electric and fuel cell vehicles. 2.5 billion gallons is enough to replace 3/4 of all the diesel used by the dirtiest, heaviest, most polluting vehicles on and off the roads in California. And if you think about the pollution in the San Joaquin Valley, in the Inland Empire, in the South Coast Air District, much of it is coming from those dirtiest, heaviest duty vehicles that are running on diesel. Biomethane can replace that very dirty, polluting fuel. Alternatively, biomethane or renewable gas can be used to generate enough renewable power to power 2 to 3 million homes in California, and it's flexible generation power that can replace natural gas in our dirtiest peaker plants and can be used to complement solar, wind, and other forms of power. We're not going to get to these benefits, though, with the current suite of incentives. California has been great, and I know I was the author of the 2012 Bioenergy Action Plan. We do have a number of incentives thanks to this legislature, but they're not moving the needle in any appreciable way. We have been stuck at 1% renewable gas in California for more than a decade, and most of that is coming from landfills. We're not getting at dairy biogas. We're not getting at forest biomass that's the cause of so much wildfire. We're not getting at all the organic waste that we now need to recycle in California. The private sector is not going to make the kind of investment that we need in renewable gas development without market certainty. Incentives are just not enough to move the needle significantly. They're great for pilot projects to get an industry started, but not to see the kind of growth we've seen in renewable electricity thanks to the Renewable Portfolio Standard. the massive amount of geothermal in Imperial County, the massive amount of solar and wind development that's occurred in Kern County and throughout the state is because we have a mandate in place that provides market certainty to the private sector, which is what really needs to come in to invest the billions of dollars and create the tens of thousands of jobs that we can do with a renewable gas standard. I do also want to address what the cost of this will be. It's not a small price tag, but we do expect that the vast majority of the investment will be made by the private sector, and it will create tens of thousands of jobs, just as the RPS has done, and that the majority of those jobs will be in economically disadvantaged communities, just like the RPS. There are some rather exaggerated cost estimates floating around about what a renewable gas standard would cost that are based not only on worst case scenarios, but beyond worst case scenarios. They're based on the most expensive form of renewable gas, which is dairy biogas, which there isn't enough of to meet the renewable gas standard. There are far cheaper forms of biogas, and with a performance-based standard that sets a market requirement, the lowest cost and most beneficial forms of biogas will probably be mixed together to meet the standard, and it will be much lower than some of the rather wild estimates that are floating around. By our estimate, using numbers that were commissioned by the Public Utilities Commission, we think that the renewable gas standard will trigger about a 1% per year increase in the cost of gas. And that's before all the other incentives that are available from cap and trade revenues, from the Electricity Program Investment Charge, AB 118, and other programs. So the actual net impact on ratepayers will be much less than 1% increase per year. That's less than the RPS. And if you think about all the benefits that the RPS has brought California, it seems like a very good investment for the state. So for all these reasons and many more, I hope that the committee will pass SB 687. And thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Wiese, members of the committee. Thank you for your time. My name is Ryan Kenny. I work for Clean Energy and Clean Energy Renewable Fuels. We are the nation's largest provider of natural gas and renewable natural gas transportation fuel. We're here to strongly support SB 687. Our company has 550 natural gas fueling stations throughout the country in 43 states. Just alone here in California, we have 150, including 65 that are public, and all of which provide renewable natural gas, as well as compressed natural gas and liquefied natural gas. As you know, renewable natural gas is sourced from the decomposition of organic materials, agriculture, food and waste, landfills, wastewater treatment plants. After it's treated to remove carbon dioxide and other contaminants, it does meet gas pipeline quality standards and is injected into the gas grid and sold through the pipeline for power generation, heat, industrial use, and of course for our company, transportation fuel. The best use of renewable natural gas is for transportation fuel. It's a diesel replacement, as Julia mentioned, and it's either a blend with compressed natural gas or liquefied natural gas, or used as a full substitute. RNG does have the lowest carbon intensity, and it's the most effective for medium and heavy-duty vehicles. It does provide a 90% greenhouse gas reduction to diesel fuel and is 100% renewable. Just like the RPS and the LCFS, SB 687 would fill in the gap in California's clean energy and climate policies. It would require the state to diversify and decarbonize the gas sector. From a business standpoint, which is of course our interest, there's only one operational project in California injecting renewable natural gas into the California grid. So this would actually open up the marketplace, and there are several concerns that we have, just having out-of-state, mostly renewable natural gas, dealing with most cost and the complexity of interconnection with the California gas grid. It's higher than any place else in the country. The renewable gas standard would be a necessary precursor to the California production and market development. So for those reasons, and for the benefit of California to disadvantaged communities and to the overall marketplace for natural gas vehicles, we do support SB 687. Thank you.
Do we have any speakers in favor? We'll just like to step up to the mic if somebody can just. And if you could just state your name, who you're representing, and your position on the bill?
Absolutely,
Without,
Mr. Chair.
Without getting into specifics.
Absolutely. Jessica Gauger on behalf of the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. We're an association comprised of all the major wastewater treatment agencies in California, including some of the larger cities. We're a member of the Bioenergy Association of California, and we're in strong support today. I want to thank Senator Allen for bringing it forward.
Very well.
Thank you.
Ed Behrens on behalf of the County of Los Angeles in support of the bill.
Joanna Sescadero, Executive Director with the Coalition for Renewable Natural Gas. We're the national trade association representing each sector of the renewable natural gas industry, and we want to pledge our support to continue working with Senator Allen in support of the concept of a renewable gas standard in California.
I am Linda Novick, representing Harvest Power, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Bioenergy Association of California. We are a North American organics recycling company operating 3 anaerobic digesters, 2 in Canada and 1 in Florida, and we're poised to come here to California to accompany our 2 composting facilities that we have here already. We have a CEC grant to be able to produce CNG in Tulare County, and we'd like to be able to expand our operations here. And it's this kind of legislation that would enable us to do that, create more jobs, and have more facilities across the state. Thank you.
Hi, Pat Shivo, representing CR&R Environmental Services. We're a large waste hauling, recycling, composting service in Southern California. We handle about 700 heavy-duty trucks serving 50 communities. We're currently undergoing a $30 million investment in anaerobic digestion to produce about 4 million diesel gallon equivalents of biofuel, and we heavily support this.
Very well. Anyone else in support of the bill? Do we have anyone in opposition of the bill that'd like to come up and make some comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Gil Topete. I am the Director for Energy for the California Municipal Utilities Association. And I'll start by saying for municipal utilities, we do support the use of renewable gas. That's not our specific issue. We are part of the non-core customers. We're not the sellers of gas. For my members, we make electricity with the gas. So our concern is more on that. We don't think that the bill properly addresses or leaves still unanswered. And I think some of the testimony and support points to my comments is there's not yet a full market that's been created, and there's a question on if the supplies are even there at these levels. One of the supporters mentioned how there's now 1 facility operating in California that injects this into the ground, into the pipeline. And a few short years ago, because biogas is an RPS eligible gas, a few short years ago, many of my members attempted to procure this product. It was coming from out of state because of the injection issue. You can inject it from out of state, but the RPS was redefined by AB 2196 Chesbro to say, no, there's certain rules. You either have to directly pipeline it to your facility or you inject it into the pipeline. Very few of our facilities actually can inject it directly. We have some wastewater facilities that can use generation on site. Some other arrangements might have it from a landfill to a generation site. Very, very few of my members can even avail themselves of this to make it RPS eligible. So some of the issues in the bill is if right now you can't even inject it into the pipeline or in very limited quantities, and then the other way for it to comply even under the RGS is then to do the other where you direct pipeline it. Our guys don't see the benefit in how we are to use it. We think it'll be cost prohibitive, maybe not at the 1% level, but if the availability of supplies aren't there, that would then induce some market leverage either to the suppliers of this gas or to the sellers of natural gas who have to comply. Because right now it sounds to us as it's comply by any means. So would that mean then to comply in receiving our shipment of gas, it has to come by rail or by tanker truck? Maybe this resource would be better used, as one proponent said, in the transportation sector. We're still left scratching our heads, and we would like it to meet our RPS eligibility. It can't meet that right now in California. Does the tenets of the bill allow it at these percentages if we buy it from a retail seller? Does it allow it to meet our RPS eligibility at that, or are we just meeting an RGS requirement? RGS requirement, RPS requirement, LCFS requirements. We've got a lot of requirements out here, and I know the intention is to goose this industry, but when there are finite locations with limited abilities to put it into the pipeline, we're just not sure if the words in print are going to achieve the outcome without inducing some market variability that gets transferred to our customers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Valerie Vlahos, Pacific Gas and Electric. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify. I first wanted to point out and thank in the analysis what has been pointed out in terms of creating possibly off-ramps or cost containment features. But the one point that I wanted to stress is that we are having in the state legislature an overarching discussion of where we're going with greenhouse gas policy. PG&E supports where we're trying to go as a state, and we want to focus on establishing our post-2020 policies using an integrated approach and set up those overarching objectives and plans before we start layering on in a piecemeal approach mandates that we, to reiterate some of the other points, might have very high costs, have a limited supply. We're concerned about that. And we think that we also have to look at an integrated way to note what is the optimum outcome that we're trying to get here. What is the best sector to use these resources? Where are they best applied? Where does it get the most greenhouse gas reduction? So a lot of unanswered questions, and I think CARB is contemplating some of these things that we can integrate with what the cost effectiveness will be to get that extra greenhouse gas reduction, that cost per ton. We just want to look at all of those things before we're trying to go forward, create, and unfortunately, what could be with a limited supply, a seller's market, which then for a buyer, that kind of puts us over a barrel and, could result in high price contracts, which we don't want to see. We want to see the outcomes realized with an overarching GHG strategy. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Michael Bocadoro with West Coast Advisors on behalf of the Ag Energy Consumers Association, Foster Farms, California Poultry Federation, several dairy processors in the state of California. We're very supportive of biomethane injection and have sponsored numerous bills before this legislature, including probably the most prominent Senate Bill 1122, which is being implemented by the California Public Utilities Commission to provide 250 megawatts of electricity-based bioenergy in California. Despite that, we're very concerned about this particular bill. Our first concern is the measure is highly premature. You heard a little bit from PG&E about that. Two concerns here. Senate Bill 605 was passed by the legislature last year. Mr. Lara's bill, member of this committee, that deals with short-lived climate pollutants. CARB was directed by the legislature to come back to the legislature a year later, January 1, 2016, with a plan on how to deal with methane and other short-lived climate pollutants. This bill prejudges that process. We haven't even seen a paper come out discussing the potential options by CARB, let alone the final recommendations to the legislature. The second concern is the broader concern. You're going to hear Senate Bill 350 today for the first time. We're trying to determine what the state's greenhouse gas and clean energy goals are post-2020. We're trying to figure out, I'm going to use an analogy, to build a house on these issues. We're trying to figure out how big the house is, what the shape of the house is. This bill is hanging wallpaper on walls that don't yet exist. This is choosing one of the pathways that have been outlined by the studies that have been done by the state agencies, known as the E3 studies. It happens to be choosing, one of two strategies. There isn't enough biomass in the state to do a decarbonization of natural gas and a transportation strategy. We're going to have to pick one of those two pathways. Right now, the current pathway is on transportation fuel, and we agree with the witnesses that transportation fuel is probably the highest and best use. The other pathway is decarbonizing the natural gas system with this gas, which is what this bill seeks to do. The E3 study identifies that as the high-cost, high-risk strategy. So why are we choosing that today? We don't need to. It's something that should be chosen down the road. But we're making that decision in this bill today, and it's the wrong decision to be making, particularly at this juncture. Second, this bill assumes that all the technically available biomass is going to end up as biomethane in the pipeline. Simply not true. A lot of the existing biomass is already being used to fuel electricity generation in the state's biomass plants. I work closely with all the dairy industry in California. We're doing digesters. We don't believe it is all going to end up as biomethane in the pipeline. A lot of it's going to go to electricity. A lot of it's going to go to local transportation fuel and will not be available, technically or otherwise, to be put into a pipeline. This bill assumes it all ends up in the pipeline, and we think that's a flawed assumption. I am going to hit on cost a little bit. You heard suggestions that the cost estimates that are circulating are overblown. Here's how we calculated those overblown cost estimates. We know today the price of conventional natural gas is about $3 an MMBTU. We also know, if you go to Southern California Gas Company's website, they tell you the market for biomethane currently is at $10 to $14 an MMBTU, 3 to 4 times as expensive as conventional natural gas. At 10%, that equates not to a 1% per year increase, but about a 30% increase. And that's the low end. If you're going to get all the dairy biogas, you already heard the witnesses talk about dairy biogas is very expensive, $20 an MMBTU. At those levels, it's nearly 7 times as expensive as conventional natural gas, which is a huge burden. There's also a disconnect here, and you heard the proponents talk about the highest and best use being transportation fuel. We don't disagree. But the disconnect is, why are you asking natural gas ratepayers, whether they're residential ratepayers or business ratepayers, to subsidize transportation fuel? We have a program for that. It's called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard. Came out of Senator Pavley's bill from several years ago, a way to get at transportation. If that's not sufficient, we should have a discussion about how we fix that program, not layer on yet another burden on businesses in California. And then finally, in terms of concerns, you heard that there are a number of barriers. We don't disagree. This bill doesn't seek to address any of those barriers. It simply seeks to pass the costs of those burdens and barriers onto the ratepayers of this state, the natural gas ratepayers, and we're concerned about that. It doesn't address the barriers to interconnection or the high costs of interconnection. And then frankly, there's a better way to do this, and we're in front of Ms. Wolk's committee just last week on behalf of the dairy industry, talking about the greenhouse gas reduction funds. These are the funds that are provided by the cap and trade allowances. And what we learned, and what we believe the better way to accomplish this, is to use those funds to subsidize those projects that can provide the most greenhouse gas reduction bang for the buck. And it would be one of the highest and best uses of those funds that we can possibly utilize in California. This is the type of things we should be funding. Right now, what's happening is a lot of my members are already captured in cap and trade. We're paying through allowances that we're buying for our natural gas usage. This bill comes along and is going to double tax those same customers with an added fee. We should be taking the funds we're already providing to the cap and trade program and use those funds to subsidize biomethane production, whether it's for electricity, whether it's for transportation fuel, or whether it's for pipeline injection. That is a much better approach, and it allows you to achieve the same thing without creating losers. A simple 5 or 10% of that money allocated to these types of projects that Senator Allen wants to benefit would go a long way to getting those projects built. We've been working closely with CARB on getting dairy digesters built. We've asked for $500 million over the next 5 years. We think that can achieve 100 to 200 new digesters being built in California at no burden to dairy processors and others who would have to pay higher natural gas rates, significantly higher natural gas rates under this bill. So we think there's a better approach. Thank you.
We're going to proceed with opposition. If you could just state your name, your position on the bill.
Yes, I'm Michael Shaw, California Manufacturers and Technology Association. I wanted to apologize to the committee and to the author for not getting our letter in sooner, but echo the comments regarding cost concerns, as well as duplication of effort with the cap and trade system at large.
Thank you very much.
Karen Mills, California Farm Bureau Federation, in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Any questions from the committee?